Testing. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Let me see who we got up in here. What time has the bell rung already to start? It did? Okay. All right, real quick, you guys see this? I'm gonna switch this now. Make sure you guys get at me on Rap Chat. I'm straight fire. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. What's up, Jazzy Fresh? All right. Hey, nigger, go back to Africa. Now, before I tell you a little bit more about what happened to me on that day, I feel it's important that I take a moment and talk about that word. Because I think oftentimes people think it's funny, they think it's a big joke, but you don't feel that way when you're on the other end of it. It's a very controversial word. You know, who can use it, who can't use it. But here's the truth. Any fool can use it. But my question to you is, why would you want to? Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this picture or not, but this was a picture taken by a group of high school students in Arizona. Now, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when this bright idea came up. Like, I've got a great idea for the yearbook picture. But here's what really bothers me about this picture, is that there's 6 opportunities here for somebody to step up and say, you know, this may not be a good idea. But no one did. So I can make the assumption that 1, they didn't see anything wrong with it. Or 2, they just didn't give a dang. Now, I posted this picture on my Facebook page. Normally, I steer clear of controversial things because on Facebook, you can't convince anyone to see things your way. Oftentimes, people rarely will they come out and say, you know what, I can see things your way. I can understand where you're coming from. But I made an exception and I posted this picture. But I didn't say anything about it. I didn't type anything. I just posted the picture. Within about 5 minutes, someone commented. And their comment was simply this. They went to a website and they looked up lyrics of some rap song that I don't know who it was. And they copied and pasted the lyrics into the comment section of this picture. And of course, that particular song was laced with the N word, it was laced with the B word, it was laced with the H word, B's and the H's. You guys know what I'm talking about. And his point was simply this. If the rappers can use it, so can they. The second comment right after that was someone agreeing with the first guy. And he says, Christopher, I agree. Either it is okay to use those words by anybody, or it is not okay by everybody. I only hear the N-word now when one black greets another. If they don't like the word, they shouldn't use it. Now, his comment would be all fine and dandy, but I don't use the word, don't like the word. And not only that, one rapper doesn't speak for me. So I disagree with his comment. Now, I said here, someone must not be familiar with YouTube comments. Because if you go to any controversial video on YouTube, if you read an article, a controversial article on YouTube, scroll down to the comment section and tell me what you see. You're going to see comments there, racist, race talk that's not being put there by rappers. So that's escape, that's a way out, it's an excuse, it's justification, and I'm not buying it, neither should you. Now, the third thing that I want to bring up is simply this, context. Little word, context. Now, I'm going to say this again. I don't like the word. Don't use the word. But I can tell you this, if someone uses it in a certain way, I can honestly say, you know what? I can understand it. So let me explain. Let me kind of tell you where I'm going here with this. I'm going to give you two examples of how people may use this word. Example number one, I'm in Alabama, lost in the woods. Or let's say I'm in Kentucky or Tennessee. Let's say for the sake of argument, it doesn't even matter where I'm at. Let's just say I'm someplace and I'm lost in the woods. Pitch dark outside, I can't see anything. All of a sudden, a man that I cannot see jumps out from behind a tree and says, "There's a nigger, get him." I'm not going to run up and give that dude a hug. My assumption is he wants to put a rope around my neck and hang me from a tree. Now let's look at example number two. I love Alabama. I'm back in Alabama, lost in the woods. All of a sudden, a man that I cannot see jumps out from behind a tree and says, "Hey, what's up, my nigga? I'm glad to see you. I'm lost." I don't like the word, don't use the word, but in example number two, I might run into that dude's arms and say, "Hello, I'm glad to see you, my nigga." Context. There's a big difference. This flyer, and I don't know how well you can see this, 2011. This flyer was being handed out, placed on people's cars in Dover, Delaware. Can everybody see that? Now, if I were to see this on my car, I wouldn't think it was an invitation to a hip-hop concert. And we can remove this from the middle here. I still wouldn't believe it was an invitation to a hip-hop concert. Now, I'm going to make an assumption here. My assumption is that this flyer wasn't being handed out by hip-hop artists. I'm going to take a guess here and say that this was probably being handed out by racists. So I want you to understand what went through my mind walking down the street 10 o'clock at night in Fort Collins when I heard those words, go back, followed by go back to Africa. Now, I know you guys are all really intelligent, so I'm going to guess here that you can tell by my accent, I'm not from Africa. So when I heard those words, I stopped dead in my tracks. I had just gotten off work. I was working at King Soopers. I had been out here in Colorado for maybe a month. The only thing I had with me, I had a small bag that had my dinner in it. I was just trying to get home. When I heard those words, I stopped dead in my tracks to see if I could see where it was coming from. I'm walking north. I see a shiny black dually truck driving south. I look into that truck. There's probably 40 yards, maybe a little bit more than that, of separation between us. I look into that truck. I see two cowboy hats in the front. I see two other white faces in the back. Now, we were separated by a long concrete column. So these guys, they couldn't come and do anything to me because of this concrete barrier. But I stopped and I watched them. There were probably 100 yards either direction to the end of the block. I watched them as they continued south, and as they got to the end of the concrete barrier, they turned around and started to come back in my direction. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this story, but it happened in Texas, and I forget what year, but a truckload of racist men picked up a black guy named James Byrd. They picked him up. They put a chain around his neck. They attached it to the back of a truck, and they drove down the street until his head came off. So I'm standing here and I'm watching this truck coming back in my direction. Each and every house had about a 6 to 8 foot hedge or a bush in front of it. So quickly, I just ducked behind a bush and I waited. Couldn't see the truck, but I could hear the engine. I could hear it getting louder and louder as they got closer. 6 houses away, 5 houses away, 4 houses, 3 houses, 2 houses, 1 house. They're right in front of me. Luckily, they didn't see me. They kept driving. I waited there to see what they would do, and sure enough, after a couple moments, they turned around, and I hear the engine again, and they come back, and they drive back down the street looking for me. I wait, unsure if it's safe or not, or unsure if they had left, and I waited. Luckily, I didn't come out because they came by again, and the last time they drove by, I knew I had enough time to at least knock on someone's door. So I came out from behind the place where I was hiding, stood in front of the door of this homeowner, and I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down. And here's why I did that. Even though these guys were looking for me and I felt that my life was in danger, I needed to calm myself down because I knew the person on the other side of that door probably didn't look like me. And it was important to me that they understood that I didn't come across as some crazy person trying to break into somebody's house. So I calmed myself, and then I knocked on the door, and I waited. After a couple of moments, the door, I could hear the locks unlocking, and the door cracks, and I see 2 blue eyes staring back at me, and the guy says, "Can I help you?" I said, "Sir, there's a car driving up and down this street. It's got 4 white guys in it. They're driving up and down the street screaming racial slurs, and they're looking for me. Would you please call the police?" He said, "Okay." He closed the door, and he re-engaged all of his locks. And I stood there and I waited, hoping that truck didn't come back. After a couple of moments, I could hear the locks again. The door cracked. I see the same blue eyes, and the man says, "The police are on the way." I said, "Thank you." He closed the door, and he locked it. At this point, I had a decision to make. Should I hide again? What should I do? I decided to just sit on the front porch and wait. But because I'm not crazy, I grabbed a couple of the biggest rocks I could find and put them nice and close. And in my mind, I'm thinking if it comes down, if it gets ugly, I'm busting somebody's head. I sat there on that front porch and I waited. And I waited. And I want you guys to imagine how excited I was when that police car pulled up. I don't know if I've ever been excited to see the police, but I was that day. They pulled up to the curb. I got up. I thought the cavalry is here. I picked up my little dinner that I had bought, and I started walking to the curb. The police officer, the driver, got out of the car, sees me, turns to a 45-degree angle, puts his hand on his hip, points at me and says, "Stop right there, drop that bag and get your hands in the air." At first I was a little confused, thinking, well, you must be confused. I'm thinking that. But just as quick, I thought, you know what? I just dropped the bag and I put my hands in the air just like he asked me to do. The driver, the police officer that was driving the car came behind me, grabs both of my wrists with one hand and twists a little bit, so I guess I couldn't break away from him. Second police officer comes within arm's distance of me. Police officer behind me asked me the question, "Do you have identification?" So my ID's in my pocket. He said, "Is there anything in your pocket that's going to stick me or cut me?" I said, "No." He reached in, he grabbed my ID, and he handed it to the second officer. That officer removed my ID, looked at it, and he says, he got on his radio, he says, "Ian James Humphrey," that's my name. And he beat my birthday, he says, 7/31. Y'all don't need to know when I was born. But he gives him my birthday. After a couple moments, silence, someone comes back onto the radio and says, "All clear." I'm guessing that that meant I had no warrants. I hadn't escaped out of prison. I wasn't wanted by the police. At that point, the police officer comes from behind me, stands in front of me, I get my ID back, and he says, "How can we help you?" Upset, I just looked at him and I said, "I'll take my chances walking home." That's exactly what I said. Picked up my dinner and I started walking home. I was upset, but mostly I was hurt. I felt that I was in a situation, one, where my life was in danger, and I didn't receive any help. I can remember thinking to myself, I survived the roughest area of South Central or of LA, and I come out to Colorado and I'm about to get killed. I can remember thinking, Colorado is racist, this is a racist state, I got to get the heck up out of here. I felt that the man behind, the blue-eyed man, I felt he could have done more to help me. I felt that the police, on their car, it says to protect and to serve. I did not feel like I was protected, and I didn't receive any service. But the other thing, once I got home and I began to calm down, I began to kind of think. I began to have a conversation with the people that were closest to me in my life. And I began to understand some things. One, 4 men in a truck doesn't speak for everyone in Colorado. Yes, I felt they were racist. Yes, I felt that they were there to do something or to do me harm, but their actions didn't speak for everyone in Colorado. The blue-eyed man who opened the door, could he have let me in the house for refuge, safety? He could have. But I don't blame him. He did exactly what I asked, which was to call the police. The 2 police officers that pulled up to the curb that I felt that treated me like a suspect instead of a victim, I can be upset with them. But I can't be upset with or label each and every police officer based on the actions of those 2. So if you're wondering, I didn't leave Colorado. I decided to stay. And I'm glad that I did. Now I'm going to admit something. Growing up in South Central LA, there weren't very many white people. Well, let me be honest, there weren't any white people. To me, growing up, white people were like unicorns. You know, you kind of thought they existed, but you weren't sure, like, think they real? If my homeboy had said, man, some white people moving up the street, I'd have been like, man, why you always lying? Why you always lying? You know, I wouldn't believe them. But it's because that was my comfort zone. I didn't know anything about white people. The only thing I knew is what I heard. And the problem with that is when we hear things that we don't verify, we label people and we take that as truth. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that I grew up believing, some of the labels that I placed on people. And these are things that I heard from friends. These are things could be that I heard from my own family members. One, if you can't see that, white people can't dance, they have no rhythm. And we know, of course, that that's not true. White people's cooking has no flavor. All white people are rich. That's what I believe growing up. It's crazy. All white people are racist. They're all racist. Well, white people smell like puppies when they get wet. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, somebody told me that and I believed it. I mean, I'm walking around like a fool in school telling other people, man, you know white people smell like puppies when they get wet? I ain't even seen one before. And the problem with these types of things is they change your behavior and will have you looking like an idiot. If I had seen a white person outside in the rain, I probably would have started following. What you doing? I'm trying to see if he smell like puppies. It was crazy. I never even had no puppy, so I wouldn't even know it. But that's how crazy that is. But that was my belief based on what I had heard or, you know, what someone had told me. Now here's the deal. I talked about in my keynote, I talked about stepping outside of our comfort zone. And I believe that that's important because I believe that if we stick to these limiting beliefs and we continue to label people and we don't find things out for ourselves, it can affect your personal lives, it can affect your professional lives, your careers, and how you view people and how you interact with people. Now, luckily for me, if I hadn't have stepped outside of my own comfort zone, this is that's me right there. That's my wife. So if I had left Colorado, I would have left before meeting my best friend. Can you come up here for a second? Let's show her some love. Yeah. She fine too, boy. I am a lucky man. All right. So had I left Colorado after a couple incidents, I would never have met my wife. And then of course, well, I'm not going to tell you guys how we met. If we have time later, we'll do that. But of course, had I left, then my life as we know it, this is my beautiful family, it would not be the same. So that's the importance of removing labels, stepping outside of your own comfort zone, or removing or stereotypes.
So for a minute, I just want to talk to you about the man in this picture. This man was born in rural Missouri. He was raised to believe that black people were lazy, that they didn't take care of their families. He was also a witness to a lynching at his schoolhouse when he was a young child. He regularly used racial epithets. His children were not allowed to associate with anyone outside of white people. This man is also my grandfather. And while he was a good man, he had those beliefs. So the big story in our family was, what's Grandpa gonna do when he meets Ian? Guess who's coming to dinner? So everyone expected there to be some craziness, but what had happened was truly remarkable, because when my grandfather, while he had a lot of these racial ideas, my grandfather was a very hardworking man. And when he found out that Ian had 3 jobs, when I met him, he became like the coolest guy on the planet. And he no longer became a black man or the N-word, like my grandfather referred to black people. He became Ian, and he became my husband, and he became his grandson. And he sat front and center at our wedding. He came to our home and shared meals with us. He did not live in Colorado, but he'd call and he'd say, "How's Ian doing?" He never asked me how I was doing. He wanted to know how Ian was doing, because he saw that Ian worked hard. Ian took care of his family. He loved his wife, and his wife was his granddaughter, and that was good enough for him. That also opened up doors for my grandfather to start seeing other people as people. And towards the end of his life, he had friendships that he fostered that were people outside of his race. And it opened doors. And I did not know this. I was sharing this. I was telling my mom that I was going to talk about him. And she said he began to get to know people other than white people. And he began to realize that he enjoyed several people, and they didn't have to be white to be friends or be cool. And this is my grandfather holding one of his great-grandchildren, bringing them home from the hospital. And I don't see any racism in his eyes. I know it's not a great picture. It was pre-digital pics. But there's no racism in his eyes. And this is right before we took her home. He was sitting in a rocking chair, and he was looking down at her. And all I see is love in that picture.
I will say this before I tell you who that is he's holding. I believe you like me because I always refer to him as Pimp Daddy. Every time I saw him, "What's up, Pimp Daddy?" He was like, "What's up?" All right, but here's who he's holding. I think I got a picture of who that is. Oh, snap. That's the wrong picture. My bad. I meant that picture. I thought I deleted that picture. I meant to put this one in here. But that's Jewel, okay? That's Jewel. All right? So that is Jewel. She has all her teeth in this picture. But he did love her, and he did come over to our house, and we did have many conversations. But that's the importance of stepping outside of our beliefs or what we've been taught. It's the importance of stepping outside of those beliefs and trying to figure things out on our own. All right, it says we need volunteers. But we need 3 volunteers that aren't easily offended. Lou, bruh. Lou, bruh. All right, come on, Lou. Just don't come here doing nothing crazy this time, man. Okay.
All right, Desi, come on up, Desi.
All right, go there. All right. So here in a second,
Give them the disclaimer.
Here in a second, I'm going to give each of you the microphone, and you're going to have you just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, just make sure that you read that. I said I need 3 volunteers, but it's important. I said that 3 people that are not easily offended. Okay? So that's what I need for this exercise. So if you change your mind, raise your hand. Okay, all right. Katie?
Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. A little bit. Don't take over.
Okay, my name's Destiny. Hi, I go by Desi. I go to school here. I'm a senior. I like ice cream. I'm a cool person.
Destiny. Wow, you talk really white. What are you?
You go to the girls' division of Regis? Is the curriculum like, do they lower the curriculum for you guys over there for the girls?
It must be even harder because you're a black girl.
All right. Just introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about you.
I'm Lou. I like to play sports, and I'm a junior.
Hey, Lou. Are you what are you? Are you Mexican? Are you Italian? Are you? You're probably Mexican. And do your parents probably have 18 kids probably?
Are you legal?
Okay. All right.
Do you like Taco Bell?
Okay. And then the last one. Just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is John. I'm a pretty good basketball player. I like Regis.
Hey, Sean. Is that your real name? No. I thought Asian people didn't play basketball.
Are you good at math? School must be really easy for you, because Asians are so smart.
Okay, now we're gonna stop right there, and real quick, let's give these guys a round of applause just for volunteering. Don't go anywhere yet. Okay, and understand, I want to thank you guys for volunteering for that, and understand, that asking those types of questions for me and for my wife that's something that's difficult to do. But we're trying to make a point here, and there's no way we could do it without your help. So I'm going to thank you for volunteering. And I think Daisy said she liked ice cream, so there's a gift card. There's a gift card for you. Let's go ahead and give them a round of applause as they leave. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, man. All right, hang on, Katie. Hang on one second. We're going to talk about what you just saw. What we're demonstrating with those 3 examples is called microaggression. And here's a definition of microaggression.
So while I read the definition, I want you guys to really listen to it, and I want you to really think about what you're hearing, because it's a big, long definition, but we want you guys to kind of understand, okay? So microaggressions are the everyday verbal, nonverbal, and environmental slights, snubs, or insults, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to target persons based solely upon their marginalized group membership. And I want you guys to focus on the fact that Sometimes they can be intentional, and sometimes they can be unintentional. And Mr. Humphrey is trying to get a video going for you guys. And while we get it going, I want you to remember that sometimes the things that you say, you may think, oh, it's not that big a deal. I don't even know why they're upset about it. But if somebody tells you that something offends you, that's their own experience. And you need to recognize and you need to acknowledge that if it's offensive to somebody else, you have to recognize that it's not you who makes the decision what's offensive to somebody else. Okay? It is us. So we want you to watch this, and it kind of gives you an idea of we didn't even know there was a name for this. So it's called microaggression. So this gives you an idea.
Oh, you're so pretty for a black girl. Oh, she has a Jew nose.
Oh, your hair would look so good if it was straight.
Jews are so cheap. Why are you so cheap?
Do you speak good English?
How are you an Iraqi Jew?
I think the person saying microaggression kind of doesn't really think about it.
This person who said it was my friend, and I was astonished that they would say something like that.
You don't want to make a big deal about it, but then it's also you just said something that offended me, so I feel like I should speak up.
Because they're micro, because they're very subtle, they're small, you feel like you don't have a reason to be upset. You're overreacting, and people even can make you feel that way when you bring it up. They're like, oh, you can't take a joke.
You're making too big of a deal of this. Why are you overreacting?
Don't take it so seriously. It was just a joke. Chill out. Say oh no, I actually love black people. I love people of color. They try to just minimize the situation.
If someone feels hurt by a microaggression, it shouldn't just be pushed to the side.
It definitely has negative impacts and leads to people disliking who they actually are. Those kinds of subtle offensive comments can build up over time, and they can have a deep psychological effect, and they can make you feel bad, and they can make you doubt yourself.
We try to just use jokes to make things less awkward or ease social experiences, but it is important because you need to be aware of what you're saying and who you're speaking to.
Think of what you say and how it can affect the person you're saying it to.
All right, so that was just an example of young kids who were talking about what it's like to experience microaggressions.
So we're going to go over just a few more specific actual cases or actual examples of microaggressions.
We looked this up, and what we found is there's a lot of different projects where people who've experienced several microaggressions, they held up a sign of something that they hear all the time. And I don't know if you caught it on the video, but people can experience a microaggression 2 to 3 times a day. And so while we think it's small, the more you hear it, the bigger it becomes. So this one. So what do you guys speak in Japan? Asian? And we call that an alien in one's own land. And we're going to talk about the message it may convey to somebody who is the recipient of a lot of these comments.
So here's the message or the messages that are being conveyed when we ask someone a question like that. One, that she's not a true American. We make the assumption that she wasn't even born here. And that can be, if you're asked that constantly over and over again, I don't know about you, but I can understand how that could be hurtful. She's a perpetual foreigner. Her ethnic, racial identity makes you exotic.
Courtney, I never see you as a black girl. You're just Courtney. We call that color blindness. A lot of times we are guilty of saying, I don't see color, I'm just colorblind. But when we say we're colorblind, I mean, it's not true. Because let's be real, guys. The first thing you notice on somebody, the first way you describe somebody is their color. So when you say, I'm colorblind, it minimizes people.
So here's the message being conveyed, and I believe there's just one here, but the message being conveyed in this case is simply this. We deny someone their racial identity and their significance. I'm going to leave this one. You do this one.
All right, ladies. It must be your time of the month. Sexist language. That language exists too. And there is a message being conveyed there.
And here's a message being conveyed. And I'm going to admit this. Okay, I have 3 daughters and a wife, so there are a lot of women in my house. I'm guilty of that. I am guilty of that. But the message being conveyed here is that women are not allowed to have bad days. Women are out of line when aggressive. And that's a characteristic in a man that I think people would applaud. It's a dismissal of feelings.
This one says, I'm not being homophobic, you're just being too sensitive. That is a denial of isms. I mean, we have lots of isms that we talk about. Racism, classism, sexism. A new one that we learned about, which is ableism, which is being prejudiced against people who are disabled. And this one, which is heterosexism, which is being prejudiced against people who are not heterosexual.
So here, the message being conveyed here is simply this. It's a denial of personal experience of individuals who experience bias. It's minimizing one's truth. And last, it's a justification, as my wife just explained, it's a justification of heterosexism. I believe this is the last one.
Her sign says, being a refugee does not make me a terrorist. That is an assumption of criminality. When we look at other groups, sometimes we assume that they have a criminal element or that they are going to hurt us.
And I'll give you a couple of examples. You know, someone who's wearing a hoodie, you view that person as they might be a criminal. And, you know, after 9/11, when our nation was very fearful, we really experienced this. But I want you guys to imagine if you put those shoes on your feet and you're this woman and someone's looking at you as though you're a criminal or that you mean them harm. Here are the messages that are being conveyed. You do not belong. And I don't think anyone likes to feel that way. I don't think anyone likes to be made to feel that way, that you don't belong. You are a criminal. And last, you're dangerous.
So we found a lot of research, and there's actually harmful impacts that these small things that people say to one another can have on people on a day-to-day basis. We just wanted to let you guys know how harmful, I mean, we've been raised, you guys know how harmful words can be. So it makes people feel excluded, untrustworthy, and like a second-class citizen. It affects the mental health of the recipient to the point where we found research that said people feel suicidal, turn to drugs, turn to eating disorders, those kinds of things. Creates a hostile or invalidating climate, perpetuates stereotypes, and it signals the devaluation of that social group identity. And the last one, it is partially responsible for inequities within education, employment, and healthcare.
Now, a question that we often get is, you know what, well, you know, that's really not my thing, or it's not my issue, or sometimes you get the question, what can I do about it? So here are just a few things that we can do about it. We can recognize, first, we can recognize and acknowledge when labels and microaggressions are being used. Oftentimes, they're dismissed, as you guys saw in the video. We can speak up if you feel safe doing so, for yourself or someone else. You can find ways to combat the issue. And here's what that might look like. You may create awareness events or posters in your school, church, or community.
So we have a challenge. Mr. Humphrey talked in his keynote about challenging you to challenge yourself. So we've come up with the hashtag RJHS Diversity Challenge. And we'd like to challenge you guys to step outside of your comfort zone and experience something that you've never experienced, and then share it with us on social media. And we'll give you all that information at the bottom, and we want you to use that hashtag. We've got some examples of some things that we'd like to challenge you guys to do, because I think sometimes we get stuck in our comfort zone, our Regis bubble, and we'd like you guys to step outside of that. There's a whole world out there. So attend a religious service that is different from your own. Visit a museum festival that focuses on a culture different from yours. Examples are Pride Fest, Cinco de Mayo, St. Patrick's Day. So we know you guys have to do direct service. We know you guys, juniors and seniors, have to do service projects. When you are signing up, challenge yourself to serve in communities where you may be the minority, where you've never experienced, many of us have never experienced being a minority at all. We'd like you to take any opportunity to travel outside of the United States. And when we say that, we know several people do travel outside of the United States, but we're not talking about staying at the posh resort on the beach, travel outside of the United States. We're talking about going and experiencing the place that you're visiting, learning about the culture, learning about the people that live there, understanding their difficulties, understanding where they come from. We often do this when we travel within the United States, going within the cities. We'll drive through the city and look at what's going on around us. Sometimes we get lost, sometimes it gets a little scary, but we really recommend you guys do that. Spend some time in the home of someone whose family is not like yours. You know, family makeup. Maybe they, you know, for whatever reason, it's just a different makeup of your family. Last one, sample authentic food of another culture. Taco Bell and Panda Express are off limits. That's not authentic, guys. We're talking about the real deal kind of authenticity, where you can go and you can, a lot of times within food, you can find out a lot about another culture. You have an opportunity to win a $50 gift card. If you share this with us using that hashtag, you can tag BE Inspired on Twitter, Be Inspired TV on Instagram, and we're giving you until April, so you try to do it over your spring break. We challenge you guys to do that.
All right, we're going to close this. We're going to wrap this up, and we're going to close this with this video that we found online, and it's called "I Am Not Black, You Are Not White." So I'm going to go here and start this really quickly.
Talking about reverse racism. That is not a thing.
We are the people in power.
Time now she finally belongs to me. Yeah, I kept playing every day, never gave up until I heard her say she never leave. I tell ya, she's a damn bright man, intelligent for sure. I am not black. I mean, that's what the world calls me, but it's not me. I didn't come out of my mother's womb saying, "Hey everybody, I'm black." No, I was taught to be black. And you were taught to call me that, along with whatever you call yourself. It's just a label. See, from birth, the world force feeds us these labels. And eventually we all swallow them. We digest and accept the labels, never ever doubting them. But there's one problem. Labels are not you and labels are not me. Labels are just labels. But who we truly are is not skin deep. See, when I drive my car, no one would ever confuse the car for me. Well, when I drive my body, why do you confuse me for my body? It's my body. Get it? Not me. Let me break it down. See, our bodies are just cars that we operate and drive around. The dealership we call society decided to label mine the black edition, yours the Irish or white edition. And with no money down, 0% APR, and no test drive, we were forced to own these cars for the rest of our lives. Forgive me, but I fail to see the logic or pride in defining myself or judging another by the cars we drive. Because who we truly are is found inside. Listen, I'm not here to tell you how science has concluded that genetically we're all mixed and race in the human species doesn't exist, or how every historian knows that race was invented in the 15th century to divide people from each other and it has worked perfectly. No, I'm not here to lecture. I just want to ask one question. Who would you be if the world never gave you a label? Never gave you a box to check? Would you be white, black, Mexican, Asian, Native American, Middle Eastern, Indian? No, we would be one. We would be together. No longer living in the era of calling human beings black people or white people. These labels that will forever blind us from seeing a person for who they are, but instead seeing them through the judgmental, prejudicial, artificial filters of who we think they are. And when you let an artificial label define yourself, then my friend, you have chosen smallness over greatness and minimized yourself, confined and divided yourself from others. And it is an undeniable fact that where there is division, there will be conflict, and conflict starts wars. Therefore, every war has started over labels. It's always us versus them. So the answer to war, racism, sexism, and every other ism is so simple that every politician has missed it. It's the labels. We must rip them off. Isn't it funny how no baby is born racist, yet every baby cries when they hear the cries of another? No matter the gender, culture, or color, proving that deep down we were meant to connect and care for each other. That is our mission, and that is not my opinion. That is the truth in a world that has sold us fiction. Please listen, labels only distort our vision, which is why half of those watching this will dismiss it or feel resistance and conflicted. But just remember, so did the caterpillar before it broke through its shell and became the magnificent butterfly. Well, these labels are our shells, and we must do the same thing so we can finally spread our wings. Human beings were not meant to be slapped with labels like groceries and supermarkets. DNA cannot be regulated by the FDA. We were meant to be free, and only until we remove them all and stop living and thinking so small will we be free to see ourselves and each other for who we truly are.
I wanted to close with that video. But as you guys continue on throughout your day, and I mentioned this in the keynote again, I just want to challenge you guys to continue to challenge yourselves, to make sure that, or to challenge yourselves to just continue to step outside of your own comfort zone. You guys have been a great audience. I appreciate it.